Orks is never defeated in battle. If we win, we win. If we die fighting, so it don't count. If we runs for it, we don't die neither, 'cause we can come back for another go. See?
Come on, it's Orks! Even if you don't know much about 40K, the Orks are a faction that you have most likely heard about. A faction of funny green guys who scream really loud, have Mad Max-style vehicles, and as many people often meme that if they believe in something hard enough, that thing will happen, leading to a faction that is extremely funny and loved by many. And they were my first faction in 40K, as my first starter box of 40K was 5th edition's Black Reach box set, which was Ultramarines versus Orks. However, there is a lot about Orks that people tend to get wrong, but that's mostly due to memes, and I completely understand that most people tend to see Orks as just the silly little guys. They are silly little guys, but they are also the most successful faction in 40K, and when they get rolling, the Orks can be one of the scariest factions to go up against. They are just as evil and cruel as any other faction in 40K. They're just more brutal and simplistic about it. Now, Orks have been in Warhammer since 1st edition, and although their fluff has been tweaked a bit here and there to better fit in with 40K's ever-changing narrative, they haven't really changed much. They are 40K's de facto horde faction. Quantity means everything to them, so I hope you brought buckets of dice to roll for both shooting and melee. It's common when Orks get into shooting or melee range that you're rolling at least 50 to 60 dice at a time, just drowning their enemies in sheer weight of attacks. But who are the Orks? What is their backstory? Who are their major players? And why in a universe of super soldiers, ancient elves, undead machines, mecha suits, and all-devouring monstrosity and eldritch gods, are the angry fungus guys the most successful faction? Well, here's the need to know on Warhammer 40K's version of Orks. So, the Orks are the 4th oldest faction within the 40K setting, being a creation of the ancient Old Ones. Although they didn't start out as the Orks we've all come to know and love, but a different race called the Krorks. We don't know much about the Krorks, aside from the Old Ones making them to fight the Necrons, who have been kicking the Old Ones' asses after being turned into undead living metal robots. Part of the problem when fighting the Necrons was that they would kill every living thing on the planets they invaded, from the tallest creature to the smallest microbe. The Necrons would turn whole planets into dead husks that no one but them could stand on. This is where the Old Ones got a bit creative, asking the question, what if we create a species that can live anywhere? And with that one thought, the Krorks were made, and proved to be extremely useful against the Necrons. The Necrons were eventually defeated with a combination of Eldar shenanigans, the Krorks slowing them down, and eventually the Silent King managing to rebel against the material world gods that enslaved them. We don't know what happened to the Old Ones out of the War in Heaven, as theories range from them just up and leaving the galaxy, to the funnier theory that they forgot to install an off switch on the Krorks, and their own creations became their downfall. Kinda ironic if you know the reason why the Necrons and the Old Ones went to war in the first place. Now, with nothing to control them, the Krorks spread throughout the galaxy, and over time they began to change into what we know now as the Orks. For millions of years, the Orks would just exist in the galaxy, ranging from small feral tribes on backwater worlds to whole galactic empires that rivaled the other factions throughout the 40K timeline. Let's put it this way, even during the reign of the Eldar and eventually the Imperium, the Orks had been thriving. Now, during the Imperium's Great Crusade, the Orks were one of the most prominent enemies they fought. The Emperor and his Space Marine Legion shattered some of the largest Ork empires the galaxy had ever seen. Though the Orks were given time to recuperate after the Great Crusade, because Horus did his whole Horus Heresy Civil War thing, which distracted the Imperium for over 1,000 years, letting the Orks come back bigger and badder than ever, with the War of the Beast in M32, which is a story we will cover some other time. The Orks have always been that faction within the story who just kind of come in and make a situation worse. Want this event to get more chaotic? Throw an Ork warlord looking for scrap. Want to start off a conflict? Have an Ork Waaagh show up to be the event's starting gun. Want to make sure a faction isn't steamrolling the others too hard? Orks come in and stop them, giving the other faction time to either counterattack or escape. And although the Orks were the center of attention for the Armageddon and Octarius campaigns, they have been awfully silent since then. It's stated that this is because their big main character, Gazgul, is running around trying to build up the biggest Waaagh the galaxy has ever seen. So we will have to wait and see what comes from that. Until then, let's talk about the Orks as a race and culture. The Orks are considered a barbaric and pretty simplistic race to anyone who views them from the outside. Even watching them from the inside, the Orks can and do come off pretty barbaric and simple when it comes to leadership or their goals. Who's the leader? The biggest and most successful one here. What's the goal? To get into a good fight, of course. Why do you want to do that? Because it's fun and it's what we Orks do best. That's pretty much how they operate, and it's worked for them for millions of years. But why are Orks like this? Well, this is due to how the old ones built them, how the Orks work on a biological and mechanical level, and how each and every Ork views the galaxy in the same way. The Orks reproduce through fungal spores. Yep, that's right. The Orks are mushrooms. Their spores are spread by an Ork simply existing in an area, just passively breathing or farting them out, letting those spores culminate and create more Orks later down the line. Hell, Orks even spread their spores when dying, meaning that when Orks invade a world, after a couple of years, there will just be tribes of Orks running around that planet, causing all the problems that the original invaders intended to make. Orks do have different categories, though. You have fungus, squigs, snotlings, Gretchen, and then the Orks themselves. Fungus is what you think it is. It's fungus. Squigs are feral animals who are extremely aggressive and simple. The Orks use them for a multitude of things, such as food, pets, attack animals, and if they get big enough, massive beasts of war to ride on. The Snotlings are the smallest Orkoid species, and as the least violent of their species, they get stuck cultivating Orks, growing areas, and tending to the animals, if an Ork doesn't make them their pet or eat them first. After the Snotling is Gretchen. Now, Gretchen and Snotlings fill the role of goblins in Warhammer, but Gretchen tend to be way more violent than Snotlings, way more clever than Orks, and notoriously far better shots than their burly cousins. Though that doesn't really matter when Gretchen suck in combat and are physically weaker than their Ork cousins. But that doesn't mean they can't be successful, or that they hate their lot in life. Gretchen have a culture of their own among the Orks, and work as servants, assistants, or merchants within Ork societies. Hell, some Gretchen have even made their own empires, or in one instance, a Soviet-style revolution? After that, you have the Orks themselves. Orks are pretty simple. They only need to eat, sleep, and fight. The more an Ork fights and survives, the more their body grows, leading to them getting stronger and stronger the longer an Ork survives and continues to thrive. Though, due to Ork culture and society being centered around fighting, it takes an especially talented Ork to survive and thrive without their fellows cutting them down or putting them back into their place before they get any funny ideas. In Ork society, you have the biggest Ork on top. This is usually the war boss of a clan of Orks who proved they are the strongest Ork around, usually making it to leadership by beating everyone else up or having the strongest guns, vehicles, and/or monsters backing them up. An orc war boss tends to have extreme amounts of power, though they can always be challenged by an orc who thinks they would be a better boss than them. It's not uncommon for an orc clan to burn through multiple bosses before they settle on one that is actually successful. Underneath the war boss are the knobs. Knobs are the noble class of the orcs, usually being the biggest and most elite warriors of their clans, being relegated to either shock troops or bodyguards for their war boss. Knobs are usually enforcers for their clan as well, and to keep their loyalty, they tend to get first pick of the loot after a battle. Then after the knobs are the humble orc boys. Orc boys are the most common orc you're going to see, though even among them there are wide varieties. As there is regular orc boys, then you have the odd boys. Odd boys are orcs who came out of the ground with something off about them. Yeah, they like fighting like any other orc, but some orcs come out more gifted than others, having a knack for engineering, being more inclined to pyromania, or seeking the thrill of the fastest vehicle they can get their hands on. This led to different groups forming, such as the Mech Boys, the Burna Boys, the Speed Freaks, and so on. Though they are considered odd, it's just an orc way of saying they specialize in certain things when it comes to orc society or war. Just avoid the pain, boys, because orc doctors tend to practice more experimental science than actual medicine. Now, how do orcs go from just a single orc all the way to galactic levels of tomfuckery? Well, orcs start at a tribal level, slowly growing their numbers and fighting amongst themselves and their local ecosystems. These tribes usually begin to meld with other local tribes by either beating it into submission or recognizing that one side as the bigger, badder boss. Slowly, these tribes begin to form roaming warbands of orcs, until the planet is overrun with greenskins and an orc warlord rises up and declares, This leads to the orcs building or capturing spacefaring vessels and launching an invasion of nearby systems, which in turn calls on more orcs to join them as word of mouth gets around that a good scrap is happening nearby. This is basically how orcs function in 40k, starting out with sticks and stones, and if they aren't dealt with, eventually their clan has the capacity for not only space travel, but also getting Titan-sized machines and squigs that rival other factions' deadliest weapons and vehicles. Hell, during the War of the Beast, we saw regular orc boys in crude versions of power armor, much like the Imperium Space Marines have, which is nuts considering orcs have a Terminator equivalent in mega armored knobs already. Basically, orcs can get pretty out of control if you let them. The reason for this is called the Waaagh field. Orcs, as a species, generate something called Waaagh energy, and this energy field grows stronger and stronger the more orcs there are, and the more violence is going on. The Waaagh energy helps orcs find each other, understand immediately who the biggest orc around is, and give odd boys a fundamental understanding of their chosen hobbies. It also influences reality to allow orcs to get away with their bullshit. The bigger the orc Waaagh, the more insane and crazy the orc weapons and vehicles get. This is where the power of belief meme came from. Though it's not because the orcs believe it will work, it works because the orc Waaagh field is making their stuff work through a sheer hype train. Fundamentally, that's how orcs function. They are a race built to do one thing, and that's fight. So their entire civilization is built around doing just that. Hell, their currency is teeth, and since orcs regrow their teeth like sharks do, it leads to them not having to worry about economics. They just punch their rivals, friends, or themselves, and they have money. Meaning they don't have to worry about affording stuff. They can just get back to doing what they do best. Fight! Now, what are the major clans of orcs running around? The orcs tend to divide each other up based on how an orc behaves or how their bodies physically grow, leading to there being 7 official clans. The first and baddest of these clans are the Goths. Known for being the toughest and most violent of the orcs, the Goth clan orcs are naturally tougher and stronger than their counterparts. meaning that when Waaghs happen, usually a Goth war boss is leading it. The Goth clan are the Orks' poster boys in 40k, and they have the honor of having Gazgul hail from them. You can identify a Goth clanner by their primarily black clothes and checkerboard patterns. The next clan is the Evil Sons clan. These orcs tend to be obsessed with speed, always finding the fastest squigs to ride or the fastest vehicle to drive. Evil Sons clans are typically speed Waaghs, driving around in massive hordes of vehicles, wanting to prove who's faster. The Evil Sons wear and paint their vehicles red. As to orcs, painting or wearing something red makes you faster. After that is the Death Skulls clan. These guys tend to be the luckiest of the clans, and also have a tendency to steal from others. Not just from other orc clans, but other factions as well. The Death Skulls tend to have a large amount of mech boys in their Waaghs, as they like to appropriate their stolen stuff into weapons and armor that they can use. They are usually seen wearing blue, as blue to orcs is the color of luck. The Bad Moons are the richest of the orc clans. Bad Moon orcs tend to grow their teeth back at twice or even triple the rate than regular orcs. This means that Bad Moons tend to have the snazzier looking vehicles and weapons compared to other clans. They also really like ranged warfare and have the largest amounts of Gretchen compared to other clans. They wear and paint their stuff yellow, as yellow means rich to the orcs. After the Bad Moons, we have the Snakebite clan. The Snakebites are orcs who prefer the old way of doing things, having a specialty in training and raising squigs into loyal mounts or monsters of war. The orcs and the Snakebites tend to fall into the Beast Snagga subculture, a culture of wanting to hunt the biggest thing and take it down the good old-fashioned way, with a big-ass stick and one's own strength. Snakebites are identified by their more primitive weaponry and looks compared to other orcs. Next up is the Bloodaxe clan, a clan focused on being the snakiest and stealthiest orcs around. These orcs tend to be the most un-orky of orcs, practicing stupid things like strategies, sneaking around, and not screaming when charging the enemy? Oh my god, the horror! The Bloodaxe clan is also known to hire themselves out as mercenaries to other races within 40k, though these are still orcs at the end of the day, and what's stealthy to them is basically common sense to us. They tend to wear camo colors. Last but not least is the Freebooters. Now, the Freebooters are those orcs who either got exiled from their clans, or just didn't have a place to go, becoming wandering bands of pirates who search for adventure and the best loot. Now, of course, these orcs also hire themselves out as mercenaries as well, but the other orcs tend to distrust freebooters because if an orc got exiled from their clan, it was probably for a very good reason. You can identify freebooters by their mix of colors and orc Jolly Rogers. Now that we've identified the clans, let's wrap this up by talking about the orcs' relationship to the wider universe. The orcs' relation to the other factions in 40k is one of constant underestimation. Orcs are so common and simple that everyone tends to treat them like they're a constant nuisance rather than an actual threat, with only those who have fought them on the battlefield actually understanding how dangerous orcs can be. And famously, the ones who understood the orcs the most were the Imperium's Commissar Yarrick and the Tau's renegade commander Farsight. Some Eldar philosophers have even argued that the orcs' simplicity is the sole reason they are so successful, and that every other race and empire has no right to judge them on those merits. When an orc Waaagh gets going, it can reshape whole sectors of space for centuries, whether it be cutting off major lanes of trade for other factions, or taking over whole sectors of space, wiping out the previous powers that lived there and forming empires that continue to launch Waaghs into neighboring sectors and plague all the other factions, even into modern 40k. Along with the problem of orc spores being able to grow, well, literally anywhere, from the most hostile of death worlds to even asteroid fields, it makes clearing out an orc empire a nearly impossible task. As well, the orcs have their own presence in the warp and their own gods, Gork and Mork. The only difference between them is that one hits you hard when you're looking, and the other hits you hard when you aren't. These two even annoy the Chaos Gods, as they have rampaged through the Chaos Realms and pissed off the 4 gods before. To make them even more frustrating, Orc souls tend to be a dime a dozen, meaning they aren't even appetizing to the beings in the warp. Along with the Waaagh energy field disrupting the warp and even opening it up so the Orcs can have something to fight while waiting for the next big scrap while in transit to someplace. The Orcs' effect on the galaxy has usually been either massive Waahs that most factions have to team up to stop, or being manipulated into conflicts for the benefit of another faction. Some famous examples of this are, as I said before, the invasions of Armageddon, which were led by Ghazghul, and the Octarius War, which was an Inquisitor's gamble to see if the Orcs could be a good counter to the threat of the Tyranids, but only showed that the Orcs and Tyranids both get worse and worse if a stalemate goes on. The Orcs endlessly flow into that war, while the Tyranids had an endless buffet. Although the Octarius War ended in Tyranid victory, Ghazghul came in and recruited half the Orcs there to his great Waaagh, which allowed the Tyranids to win. The Orcs in modern 40k have been pretty quiet lately. Sure, there are Orc Waaghs that pop up from time to time in some narrative campaigns, but major events have placed the Orcs as mostly background characters. But Ghazghul is building up his great Waaagh, and the last time the galaxy forgot about the Orcs, well, it nearly brought the galaxy and the factions within it to their knees. So we will have to see what happens when GW wants to put Ghazi back in the spotlight. The Orcs on the tabletop are the original Horde faction of the game. Their units tend to be tough, but they lack protection, and their attacks rely on sheer weight of hits over actual quality of power to bring their enemies down. Their whole strategy is just drowning your opponent in bodies, filling the air with bullets, or running their opponents over, with their main ability being Waaagh, a once-breaking ability that allows the Orcs to shoot and charge after performing movements that usually wouldn't let them. The idea of Orcs is that you are setting up for the Waaagh, positioning your Orcs to take advantage of the Waaagh effect and get the most out of them. The Orc playstyle is that you are a hammer and everyone else is the nails. You find the right spot to hit your opponent and keep wailing on them until they break, or you do. Although the quality of your units is trash, the upside is that Orcs are a faction that encourage experimentation and that it's completely fine to lose units. They're good at teaching you to accept what you can do and accept what you can't. Though Thousand Sons are my favorite faction in 40k, Orcs are my favorite army. Their stories are always a fun read, and their army is extremely fun to play, as their stuff tends to be random, as the Orcs tend to get abilities, then rules that focus on luck or random things happening. Hell, the Orc army encourages you to take vehicles from other factions and slap Orc stuff on them. Want a battle fortress? Slap an Orc cannon and Orc truck armor on a Land Raider. Want an Orc truck? Grab the Gene Stealer Colt's rock grinder and Orc it up. The Orcs encourage creativity through salvaging others' stuff. Though if you want an Orc army, just be ready to build and paint a lot of models. Well, that's it for November. There sadly won't be a Patreon poll for the month of December, as there will only be 2 videos for the month. I'll be doing a large game review and also finally tackling Gathering Storm, the event that launched 40k into its new era, and was the starting point of 40k finally joining D&D and Magic the Gathering in the mainstream. So when we come back, unless we reach 15k subs to review Fire Warrior, we'll be revisiting Halo, with the game that everyone says killed it, Halo 5. If you want to see it early, subscribe to the Patreon, or if you want to watch me play games or chat, follow my Twitch. But until then, I gotta get to work. So, I'll see you all next time.